Time Travel for Dummies by the Shimmerman. Chapter 1. So, you've time traveled. Now what? You may be disoriented. That's normal. Temporal displacement affects the inner ear, the digestive tract, and occasionally the soul. If you're reading this, you've either slipped through a rupture in space-time or been forcibly relocated by a mechanism you didn't understand. That's also normal. When I built my time travel portal device, I wish someone had told me of all the triumphs and pitfalls that I would encounter as I journeyed through time. Here I will try and impart what I learned along the way. I am called the Shimmerman, not by choice. The name was given to me by a child in 1897 who saw me shimmer in the fog and screamed, "It stuck." I wear silver because it reflects less history. You'll learn as you go. This guide is not a joke. Time travel is not a novelty. It is not a vacation. It is a condition, a burden, a responsibility. You are now a variable in a system that does not tolerate variables. You must proceed carefully. Step 1. Assess your temporal coordinates. Look for signage, architecture, language. Avoid asking, "What year is it?" unless you want to be institutionalized. If you see horses but no cars, you're likely pre-1900. If you see cars but no horses, post-1920. If you see neither, you may be in prehistoric forest or really in trouble. Step 2. Do not interact with yourself. This is not superstition. It is physics. You are not meant to occupy the same moment twice. If you see yourself, leave. If you must speak, do not touch. If you must touch, document everything. You may not remember it later. Step 3. Establish a cover identity. Choose a name that fits the era. Braden will not work in 1642. Avoid claiming to be from the future. You will be burned, jailed, or podcasted. Learn the local currency. Barter if necessary. I once traded a wristwatch for a goat. The goat was named Horatio. He saved my life in 1871. Step 4. Watch for temporal agents. They exist. They are not called time cops. They are archivists, auditors, and custodians of causality. You will not recognize them. They will recognize you. If approached, be polite. If detained, do not lie. They already know. Final note. You are not alone. Others have traveled. Some return. Some remain. Some become legends. Some are erased. Your choices matter. Your presence matters. Time is not a line. It is a wound in the fabric of reality. Do not make it worse. I will guide you. I have made mistakes. Listen, and you will make fewer. The Shimmerman. Chapter 2. The Clockmaker's Mistake. I arrived in Prague in the spring of 1610. The air was thick with soot and invention. I had intended to land in 2043, but the coordinates slipped, an error in calibration, or perhaps a lesson. Time does not like to be aimed. I wore gloves then. Not for warmth, but to avoid leaving fingerprints on history. My jacket shimmered, as it always does, though I kept it hidden beneath a wool cloak. Silver draws attention. Attention draws questions. Questions draw consequences. I met the clockmaker by accident. His name was Joseph, and he was building a mechanism to track lunar eclipses. He believed the moon was a hole in the sky, and that time bled from it. I admired his poetry, if not his math. He invited me into his workshop. I should have declined. I should have walked past the door and into anonymity. But I was curious, and curiosity is the first betrayal of the time traveler. Joseph showed me his gears, his pendulums, his sketches. He asked questions I should not have answered. I told him about atomic oscillation. I mentioned quartz. I described a wristwatch. He built it. Not perfectly, of course. It was crude, oversized, and powered by a spring mechanism he didn't fully understand. But it worked. It kept time more accurately than anything in Prague, and it changed everything. Merchants began arriving from Vienna to see the miracle clock. Joseph was offered a position at court. His rivals accused him of sorcery. One was arrested. Another fled. The city's guilds fractured. Joseph's invention destabilized the local economy, the academic hierarchy, and the timeline itself. I tried to undo it. I stole the clock. I burned the sketches. I whispered to Joseph in his sleep that it had all been a dream. But the damage was done. The idea had taken root. It would echo forward, misaligned, until it collided with a different century. I left Prague under moonlight. My jacket shimmered. I did not. For Dummies, how to avoid inventing the future. Do not explain modern technology, even if someone asks, especially if they're holding a wrench. Never sketch a diagram. A napkin drawing can become a doctrine. Avoid phrases like, "in my time." They invite questions you cannot safely answer. If you must speak, speak vaguely. Say, "some believe" instead of, "I know." Destroy anything you leave behind. Notes, devices, even footprints if possible. Curiosity is a kindness. But in time travel, kindness must be silent. You are not there to improve history. You are there to survive it. Joseph died in obscurity. His clock was dismantled. But a boy who saw it grew up to design a new kind of gear. That gear was used in a machine that powered a factory, that built a part for a satellite that failed in orbit and triggered a cascade of errors that led to the loss of a probe meant to study Europa. That probe would have found something. You see how it works. The Shimmerman. Chapter 3. The Girl and the Moth. It was 1946. I had landed in Manila by mistake. The coordinates were meant for a symposium in Geneva, but my jacket shimmered too brightly during transit and bent the trajectory. I arrived barefoot, disoriented, and holding a pocket watch that hadn't been invented yet. The city was rebuilding. War had left its fingerprints on every wall, every face. I kept to the shadows, as I always do. Time travelers are not meant to be seen, but sometimes we are. She was 7. Her name was Maria. She found me in the ruins of a library, chasing a moth with a stick. I watched her for a moment, then turned to leave. But she saw the shimmer. She called out. I stopped. She asked if I was a magician. I said no. She asked if I was lost. I said yes. She offered me a mango. I should have declined. I should have vanished. But I sat beside her and accepted the fruit. We spoke for 10 minutes. I told her about stars. I told her that moths navigate by moonlight. I told her that books remember things even when people forget. She asked if she could be a librarian. I said yes. That was the mistake. She became one. She grew up, studied history, and founded an archive dedicated to preserving oral traditions. One of those stories, about a forgotten ritual in the Cordillera Mountains, was published in a journal that reached a linguist in Oslo. That linguist used the ritual's structure to model a new syntax engine. That engine was used in a translation algorithm that misinterpreted a diplomatic message in 1983. The message was read as a threat. A satellite was repositioned, a signal was missed, a launch was delayed, a treaty was signed, a war was avoided, all because I accepted a mango. This is the butterfly effect. It is not a metaphor. It is a law. Every kindness, every word, every pause ripples outward. You cannot predict the consequences. You can only choose the moment. For Dummies, understanding the butterfly effect. Every action has consequences, even small ones, especially small ones. Kindness is not neutral. It changes things, sometimes catastrophically. Do not assume you're helping. You're not from here. You don't know what's fragile. If you intervene, document it. You may need to undo it later. If you save someone, ask why. Then ask what it costs. The butterfly does not know it started a storm. You must. I do not regret speaking to Maria, but I remember the moth. It landed on my sleeve. It glistened. It flew away. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had swatted it. The Shimmerman. Chapter 4. The Price of Interference. There are moments when silence feels like betrayal, when you see a child about to drown, a city about to burn, a man about to be executed for a truth no one understands. And you think, I could stop this. I did. It was 1792 in a village near Lyon. A man named Etienne was accused of heresy for claiming the earth was older than the Bible allowed. He had no proof, only intuition. But he was right. I knew he was right. I had seen the strata myself. I had walked through epochs. They were preparing to hang him. I had no plan, only a jacket that shimmered and a voice that carried oddly in the wind. I stepped forward and spoke. I told them the Earth was 4.5 billion years old. I described fossils. I described carbon dating. I described satellites that hadn't been built yet. I told them Etienne was not a heretic. He was a prophet. They listened. They released him. And for a moment I felt something close to pride. But pride is a parasite. It feeds on the illusion of control. Etienne wrote a book. It circulated quietly, then loudly. It reached Paris, then Berlin. It inspired a movement, natural philosophers who rejected divine chronology and embraced empirical chaos. One of them, a young man named Albrecht, developed a theory of geological entropy that was later used to justify a doctrine of historical collapse. That doctrine became a manifesto. That manifesto became a revolution. That revolution failed, but the failure was violent. Thousands died. And Etienne? He was executed anyway, 10 years later by a different regime for a different reason. His ideas outlived him. So did the blood they spilled. I returned to Lyon once, in 1841. The village was gone. A factory stood in its place. I asked a man if he'd heard of Etienne. He said no. He said the ground was unstable. He said the foundations kept cracking. I said nothing. This is the price of interference. You do not get to choose the consequences. You do not get to trace the ripples. You do not get to be the hero. You get to be the cause. For dummies, when you think you're doing the right thing, never correct someone's belief system, even if it's wrong. Especially if it's wrong. Do not introduce new ideas. They will mutate. Avoid public speeches. You are not a prophet. You are a variable. If you change one life, track the consequences. They will multiply. Regret is not a reason. It is a warning. You are not the hero of history. You are its guest. I still wear the jacket. It still shimmers. But I walk slower now. I speak less. I do not save people. I do not correct history. I do not interfere, unless I must. The Shimmerman. Chapter 5. The Silence That Saved a Century. I once stood in a room with a man who would become a tyrant. It was 1905. The city was Batavia. The man was young, brilliant, and angry. He spoke of injustice, of empire, of fire. He had not yet written the pamphlet that would ignite a movement. He had not yet met the general who would weaponize his words. He was still a student, still uncertain. I could have stopped him. I knew what he would become. I had seen the statues. I had seen the ruins. I had seen the mass graves. But I said nothing. Instead, I watched. I listened. I left. That silence haunted me for years, but history did not bend. It did not fracture. It did not collapse, because I did not interfere. And then, something unexpected. The pamphlet was never written. The general died in a flood. The movement dissolved. The tyrant became a teacher. He died in obscurity. the century shifted. Not because of me, but because I did not become part of it. This is the paradox of restraint. Sometimes the best way to change history is to leave it untouched. For Dummies, what you must remember. I offer these instructions not as commandments, but as cautions. You are not a god. You are not a savior. You are a ripple in a river that does not want to be disturbed. Never reveal future events. Even if you believe it will help, even if you're certain, the future is fragile. It resists spoilers. Do not name yourself. Your name may echo. It may be recorded. It may be misused. Choose silence over legacy. Avoid mirrors. They do not reflect time accurately. You may see versions of yourself that should not exist. If you must speak, speak in questions. Let others arrive at truth without knowing you led them there. Leave no artifacts, no devices, no documents, no digital traces. Time is allergic to foreign objects. If you feel the urge to interfere, wait. History is not a fire to be extinguished. It is a forest. It regrows. It remembers. I have walked through centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen kindness ripple forward into catastrophe. I have seen cruelty soften into peace. You will be tempted. You will be afraid. You will be alone. But if you remember these rules, you may yet remain human. The Shimmerman. Chapter 6. The Drift. There is a moment, quiet, unmarked, when you forget where you began. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins with small things. You misremember the color of your childhood home. You forget the name of your first teacher. You recall a sibling who never existed. You dream in languages you've never learned. This is temporal drift. It is not madness, it is erosion. Time does not like passengers. It wears them down, polishes them smooth, until they fit into any century. You become fluent in eras. You adapt, you survive, and slowly you dissolve. I first noticed it in 1879. I was in Kyoto watching lanterns float down the river. I remembered a woman I had loved in 2026. Her name was something. I could see her face. I could hear her laugh. But her name was gone. I searched for it. I returned to the year. I found the apartment. I found the photograph. I found the note she had written me. It was signed, "To the Shimmerman, whoever you were." I left. Drift is not just forgetting. It is becoming untethered. You begin to feel at home in places you were never meant to be. You stop asking, "When am I?" and start asking, "Who was I?" You must resist this. For Dummies, how to anchor yourself. Keep a journal. Write daily, even if it's nonsense, even if you forget the language. The act of writing preserves identity. Choose a name and hold it. Do not change it. Do not adapt it. Let it be your tether. Mine is the Shimmerman. It was given. I kept it. Carry an object from your origin, not for nostalgia, for calibration. An anchor. Time responds to familiarity, a coin, a key, a scent. Avoid prolonged stays. The longer you remain in one era, the more it claims you. Move. Drift deliberately. Speak aloud your origin once a week. Say the year. Say the place. Say the name of someone who knew you before you shimmered. I have forgotten many things, but I remember the mango. I remember the moth. I remember the silence in Lion. And I remember that I was once a man named Number. That part is gone. But I remember why I travel. To warn you. The Shimmerman. Chapter 7. The Temptation of Return. Every traveler eventually dreams of going home, not to a place, to a moment, a conversation, a decision, a version of themselves that hadn't yet shimmered. I have stood outside my childhood home 3 times, once in 1982, once in 1997, and once in a year that hasn't happened yet. Each time I watched the windows. Each time I thought, if I knock, what changes? I never knocked. Home is not a location. It is a trajectory. Once altered, it cannot be restored. You may find the house. You may find the people. You may even find the version of yourself that still believes in linear time. But you will not belong there. And if you interfere, if you try to rewrite your own past, you will fracture more than memory. I know this because I tried. It was 2003. I had just lost someone. Not to death, but to distance. I thought, if I arrive one day earlier, I can say the thing I didn't say. I can change the goodbye. I did. She stayed, and everything unraveled. The job she didn't take, the city she didn't move to, the friend she didn't meet, the child she didn't have, the book she didn't write, the protest she didn't attend, the law that wasn't passed, the flood that wasn't prevented. I erased 1,000 lives to preserve one moment. I returned a week later and undid it. I said the goodbye. I let her leave. I let history breathe. She never knew. But I remember. For dummies, if you're thinking of going home, ask yourself why. Is it grief, regret, nostalgia? These are not reasons. They are symptoms. Do not visit your own timeline, not directly, not closely, not more than once. The gravitational pull of familiarity is dangerous. If you must observe, do so anonymously. No contact, no gifts, no warnings. You are a ghost. Act like one. Never try to fix a personal mistake. You will create others, bigger ones you cannot see. Accept that home is forward, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it hurts. I still wear the jacket. It still shimmers. But I no longer chase the past. I walk toward the silence. The Shimmerman. Chapter 8. The Woman in Black. I met her in 2014-60, in a city that hadn't been built yet. The air was clean, the buildings were grown, and the people spoke in chords. I was there to observe a treaty signing between two species, one carbon-based, one not. I had no intention of staying. She arrived on a motorcycle that didn't touch the ground. Black leather, blonde hair, eyes like polished sapphires. She didn't shimmer. She burned. I knew immediately. She was a traveler. Not like me. Not cautious. Not quiet. She moved through time like a blade through silk. Her name was Chime. Or so she said. Names are rarely real in our line of work. She had no guidebook, no rules, no regrets. She claimed to have escaped a paradox in 1985 by seducing it. I didn't ask what that meant. She looked like she could seduce an active volcano. We traveled together for a while. Not because it was safe, because it was less lonely. Chime believed in intervention. She believed in rewriting. She believed that time was a canvas, not a statue. I disagreed. We argued often, but we never separated. In 1347, she saved a village from plague by burning the rats. In 2091, she taught a child to code before the language was invented. In 1812, she whispered a poem into the ear of a dying soldier. That poem became a battle hymn. That hymn became a movement. She left fingerprints everywhere. I warned her. I showed her the drift. I showed her the echoes. I showed her the grave of Etienne. She listened. Then she kissed me and said, "You shimmer." I blaze. That's the difference. We parted in 1963. She walked into a crowd and vanished. I don't know where she went. I don't know if she still travels. But sometimes, in certain centuries, I hear her name. I see her shadow. I find a poem that doesn't belong. And I wonder. For dummies. On Companionship. If you find another traveler, do not trust them immediately. Time attracts liars. If you choose to travel together, set boundaries. Not for safety, for sanity. Do not fall in love with someone who rewrites history. You will lose them to their own legend. If they leave, let them. Time does not honor attachments. If they return, ask no questions. They will not answer truthfully. I still wear the jacket. It still shimmers. But sometimes I smell leather in the wind, and I remember that once, for a brief stretch of centuries, I was not alone. The Shimmerman. Chapter 9. Two travelers, one mission. We met again in 1988, in a diner that hadn't existed yet. I was eating pie. She was still wearing black leather and a grin that had survived 3 centuries. She sat across from me without asking. "You still shimmer," she said. "You still burn," I replied. We didn't speak for a while. Time travelers rarely need to. The silence between us was thick with collapsed timelines and near misses. Eventually, she said, "We should teach them." "The dummies?" I asked. She nodded. "The ones who stumble into wormholes with no plan. The ones who think time travel is a shortcut to fame, fortune, or fixing their mistakes. The ones who touch things they shouldn't." I agreed. We began writing together. Not a book, a guide, a survival manual, a warning. We called it Time Travel for Dummies because humor is the only way to soften the truth. But we were serious, deadly serious. We divided the work. Chime wrote about intervention, how to do it, when not to, and what it costs. Her chapters are sharp, fast, and unapologetic. She believes in action, but she's learned restraint. I wrote about observation, how to disappear, how to drift, how to remember who you were. My chapters are slower, quieter, and full of ghosts. Together we travel, we teach, we leave copies of the guide in places it shouldn't exist. A scroll in Alexandria, a cassette tape in Reykjavik, a tattoo in Johannesburg, a whisper in Kyoto. We've saved a few, warned many, lost more. But we keep going. For dummies, if you're traveling with a partner, choose someone who disagrees with you. Harmony is dangerous. Friction keeps you sharp. Divide your roles. One watch, one act, one remembers, one forgets. Never fall into the same moment together. If you're both caught, you're both erased. If one of you drifts, anchor them. With a story, with a name, with a touch. If one of you dies, do not go back. Time punishes grief. We are not heroes. We are not legends. We are two travelers in a shimmering jacket and black leather, walking through centuries with a guide for fools. And if you're reading this, you're one of them. Welcome. The Shimmerman, Chime. Chapter 10. The Man Who Unwrote Things. We found him in a year that didn't exist. It was a pocket of time, folded, hidden, stitched between 1954 and 1955. A temporal cul-de-sac. We were tracking a signal, a pulse of entropy that didn't match any known paradox. Chime thought it was a collapsed loop. I thought it was a warning. We were both wrong. He called himself Null. No shimmer, no burn, just absence. He wore gray, not silver, not black, just gray, the color of forgetting. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was in past tense. I erased the Library of Nine Suns. I unremembered the Siege of Glass. I removed the woman who taught the first lie. We didn't believe him, until we checked, and found nothing. No records, no ruins, no echoes. Null was not a traveler. He was a subtractor, a man who moved backward through time, not to observe or interfere, but to delete, not to change history, but to hollow it out. We confronted him in a ruined observatory. Chime drew her blade. I held the guide. He looked at us and said, "You're writing instructions for dummies." I'm removing the need. We fought, not with weapons, with time, with presence, with paradox. Chime anchored us with a story, one she had never told me. A moment from her childhood before she burned, a name she had buried, a song her mother used to hum. She sang it aloud, and the observatory shook. I read from the guide. I read Chapter 1, then Chapter 4, then Chapter 7. I read the rules. I read the warnings. I read the names of every dummy we had saved. Null flinched. He began to fade. We didn't kill him. You can't kill what isn't there. But we pushed him out of the fold, back into the stream, back into time. We sealed the pocket behind us. For dummies, on dangerous travelers. Not all travelers are teachers. Some are editors. Some are censors. Some are viruses. If you meet someone who speaks only in past tense, leave. They are not anchored. They are not safe. If you feel yourself forgetting something you once knew, write it down, even if it makes no sense, especially then. Never destroy a copy of this guide. It may be the only record left. If you meet Null, do not engage alone. Call us. We'll find you. We are still traveling, still teaching, still shimmering and burning. But now we know. Time is not just a stream. It is a battlefield, and someone is trying to erase the map. The Shimmerman, Chime. Chapter 11. The end of the guide. We've written what we can. We've told you about the drift, the danger, the silence, the burn. We've warned you about Null. We've explained the rules, the ethics, the cost. We've shared our failures. We've shared our names. If you've read this far, you're either already traveling or about to. You may think you're prepared. You're not. But you're less unprepared than most. That's something. We're still moving, still shimmering, still burning, still arguing in the ruins of forgotten centuries, still leaving fragments of this guide in places it shouldn't be, still saving dummies, still losing them. Time doesn't end. It folds, it loops, it forgets, it remembers. We've seen the beginning. We've seen the end. We've seen the middle collapse and rebuild itself in the shape of a song. We've seen love ripple forward into war. We've seen cruelty soften into mercy. We've seen dummies become legends, and we've seen legends erased. We don't know where we're going next. That's the point. That's the burden. That's the gift. If you find us, say nothing. Just shimmer, or burn, or both. We'll know. Final instructions for dummies. You will make mistakes. Make them with intention. You will be tempted to interfere, resist, or accept the cost. You will forget things, write them down, speak them aloud, anchor yourself. You will meet others. Not all of them are friends. Not all of them are real. You will want to go home. Forward is the only direction. This is the end of the guide, but not the end of the shimmer, not the end of the burn, not the end of you. And remember, when we use the term dummies, it is only offered as a term of endearment. The Shimmerman, Chime. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.